But I think the main things is at the end of the day, volleyball is volleyball. It's in the same 9x9 court, and the rules are the same. So we. Is that on the back of your shirt?
Yeah, it's on the back of the shirt.
You did. A little free shout out for you. And it doesn't matter who's on the other side of the net. You need to still execute to the best of your ability if you want a chance to win.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. I've missed you. My name is Everett Delorme. Rob's missed you. That is Rob St. Clair. I'm in Toronto. He's in Chicago. And welcome to episode number 1 of the 9x9's coverage of the 2024 Paris Olympics. Welcome.
Let's go, dude.
It has been a while since we've seen you guys and we've talked to you guys since about 2 weeks since VNL. And now we are here to cover the biggest event in volleyball, the Olympic Games. And we are here to break down pool by pool everything to get you guys ready and prepared for the biggest event in volleyball. Rob, how you doing?
Oh, I'm so excited. Everett. You and I have been all over the place the last 2 weeks, and we were talking the other night. Like, you know what I'm really excited for? Just like shoot some nonsense in the podcast, just like watch ball, talk ball, like get back into the flow of it the way we're used to. Like, we had a lot going on, and I'm so excited because this is our first Olympics really together. And it's our first time, like, we're going to be sitting down. We're going to be watching basically every single game, and we're going to be so busy. And it all starts right here. We're going to go pool by pool leading up to the Olympics. Don't worry. At the end of this video, we'll tell you guys about our sort of content plan, our schedule for the entire pre and during Olympics time period. And we're going to be doing 2 episodes tonight. We're going to split them up. We're starting here with men's pool A, and then we'll end this video, start a new video, talk about women's pool A. I'm very excited about this. Everett, I'm sure you are as well, because this is Canada's pool.
I mean, yeah, I am excited. Obviously, a little bit nervous once we actually get down to this. But this pool, we've talked about it in past shows, Rob. This is the best field we've ever seen. That you and I have ever seen at the Olympics. You've got serious contenders up and down the field. And if you look at this pool, that's exactly what it is. Obviously, it's led by France. France is the defending Olympic champs. They are hosting the Olympic Games, and they're the current VNL champs, the most recent team to win anything in the world of volleyball world.
Not including the Hubert Wagner Memorial, Peter.
That doesn't count. Get out of here, Peter. Whatever.
Or the Volleyball Challenger Cup. Yeah, we're not talking about any of that nonsense. None of that matters. It's the Olympics.
Yeah, France is the most recent winner of the 2024 VNL, and they did so without 2 of their best players, including the reigning Olympic MVP in Irvin Ingapeth, and also Chen Yeze, who is one of the best. So when we look at this pool, Rob, all the way through it, it's going to be interesting. How do you want to slice this up? What do you think about this?
I also think it's incredibly spicy. I think this is by far the deepest field in the history of Olympic volleyball. We've talked about it a lot as the pools were drawn, and I'm excited to really dive into it. I think what we're going to do is go team by team, because now in the last 2 weeks since we last talked to you guys, every Olympic roster has been released. So we now know the 12 players and the 13th alternate player for every team, which is great. So we can talk about all that. And we've got kind of some storylines to lay down pre-tournament for every team. Then we can take a look more at the pool. I've got the pool schedule asset ready to look at and talk about who plays who and when and recent history and some stuff that we can talk about more just for the pool. But I think we should start with each individual team first, now that we know everything there is to know about their roster. And Everett, do you want to start at the top or the bottom of this pool?
I want to start at the top. I want to start with France, and this French team, Rob, bringing back 10 of 12 Olympians.
It's ridiculous.
2021 in Tokyo. When you look at the depth on this roster all the way through, this is one of the most cohesive rosters we have in volleyball. It's one of the closest rosters just in terms of chemistry, and you have some big firepower on this roster. I mean, Rob, coming into this summer, you and I were in agreement in saying that there was 4 teams that really had a good shot at a medal. Poland, USA, Italy, and of course France. But I think you and I are both in agreement that their chances or their prospects have shot up significantly after the way they won the VNL and the way that they are playing right now.
Completely agree. And it's the way that they won the VNL. It's not even like the personnel necessarily, because yeah, like you said, they did that without Ngapet and without Chinese, but like the grit that they showed and the it factor, like we've talked about already for VNL, that we're going to continue to talk about for the Olympics, like that unteachable, magical, like clutch ability to just figure it out and win a match when a match needs to be won in front of you. France has that thing that you can't really teach, and we saw it in that 5-setter in the semis against Poland in VNL. We saw it in the final against Japan, like that they're able to figure it out in different matchups and different situations, like in Poland, for example, like crazy hostile environment, 18-16 in the fifth. Like this team has something that you can't teach, you can't manufacture, you kind of either have it or you don't. And I think a lot of it is for a huge amount of swagger, amount of swagger. And they bring back that continuity like you talked about. I don't think there's any team with more continuity in the roster than France right now. Really, the big difference between now and the Olympics that they last won is their head coach is Andrea Gianni. And he's like the chillest, most like vibes dude that fits this French culture of anybody, maybe even more so than Laurent Tilly, who won it with them last time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you're bringing in one of the legends of the game, and you know Gianni's still, I guess, relatively new to coaching in the scale of it, but he's already had success, and I think he really fits this French team well.
Totally.
You know, there's certain coaches who are better at different things. There's some coaches who are better at building, right? You put in place structures and processes and the way a team is going to play the game, like a Tuomo Semiovuo from Canada that we can talk about a little bit. But Gianni is just all about vibes, right? He's all about managing those high-level egos. And with France, you've got a lot of egos, and you've got a lot of the hey, this is the way we want to play that game. So with Gianni understanding that, there's always a little bit of give and take with that French team. And that's what kind of makes them so fun to watch and also so volatile, right? This is a team that lost in the quarterfinals of the European Championships after winning that 2021.
That was house money. That was house money. They were partying that whole tournament.
but that's exactly it, right? This is a team that we know that as much as they can turn it on, and also sometimes have it turned off. But I don't think if there's one team that I think is going to relish really playing in that spotlight, I think it's really going to be France. I think they're really going to be able to take on that opportunity, and they're really going to be able to thrive through all of that.
So that's another big difference between now and Tokyo, when France had all that success, is like in Tokyo, the whole world was different, right? The Olympics was postponed a year. There were no crowds. There were so many restrictions around everything. And just from a volleyball perspective, like nobody on planet Earth expected France to go in and medal that tournament. I mean, it was announced.
It was like they were an outside. They were an outside contender.
Yeah, like everybody had respect for France, but they hadn't shown anything like the ability to win in Olympic Games until like all of a sudden they went out and did it, right? We knew going into that tournament it was Laurent Tilly's last ride. We knew he was just gonna go out with the boys, like this crew that had helped France get to the elite level over the last decade. And then they kind of came out of nowhere, shocked the world, and won. And they got past a lot of teams in the process that had high expectations to win, namely, obviously, Poland, who they beat in that quarterfinal. This year, it's different. Not only is France now very much a contender, there is no flying under the radar for this French team. The expectations are higher. I wouldn't say there's pressure because they already accomplished an Olympic dream. They already won Olympic gold. They don't have as much pressure as a team like Poland does this time around. But the spotlight is on them. They're playing at home. The lights and the celebrations and the pomp and circumstance and all of the things that we're going to get back this Olympics that we didn't have at all in 2021 because of the pandemic, which I'm so excited about. France is going to be in the middle of all that with so many more of these distractions, and a distraction has been known to sneak up and bite this French team once or twice before in the past. So I'm curious about how they manage that. Does that reflect differently upon the volleyball that they are going to play, because everything else non-volleyball related is so different for them, even though they're one of the teams in this tournament where the volleyball piece has changed the least amongst many of the teams here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of distractions around the Athletes Village and surrounding the Olympic Games in a lot of different ways. And
good ways, really good ways.
In a lot of good ways, for different reasons, let's say. But in the past, especially in general, I think the sports were kind of staggered. Say they would start maybe a little bit earlier or a little bit later. This time it's kind of going toe to toe, right? Like they're using the entire length of the Olympics to play indoor volleyball. So to make a deep Olympic run, like you're going to need to stay engaged and focused for like 2 weeks, and that might be a lot for anyone really in the athletes village.
It is less matches this year than it's ever been, for the
That's
record. The new format this year, you only play 3 matches in pools instead of 5,
which just leads more time for whatever else it may be.
But speaking
watching other sports,
right? Yes, of course. Speaking of France and pool play, though, I mean, remembering back to Tokyo, they got donged in their first match of pool play by the United States. Like my beloved USA came out the gates and kicked the crap out of France. And then, of course, we all know what happened. We didn't make it out of pools. France got 4th in their pool, matched up against Poland in the crossover, beat them, went on to win Olympic gold. So, like, this year, you can't afford to sleepwalk the first match of the tournament. There is not that. You don't have 5 matches anymore. You only have 3. I'm not saying that France is going to do that, but that did happen to them last time out. They obviously ended up being just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've talked about it, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more. Like, there's no easy match in this pool whatsoever. No. This is a stacked pool all the way through. Like when you're looking at Slovenia, who like basically demolished the preliminary round of the VNL this year. Canada, who's a dark horse, and even when you look at Serbia, sure, they just snuck in, but if they get hot from the baseline, anything can happen. So this is a pool that France should win, but is also a little bit wide open.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And roster-wise, I mean, we talked about it, 10 out of the same 12 Olympians. The only 3 new guys, Théo Four is the backup opposite this year because of Boyer's ankle injury. Quentin Jouffroy is the third middle who has proven himself to be valuable, at least as a pinch server. And I mean, he started the VNL finals. And then Timothée Carl. Solid. Yeah, he's been solid. And then Timothée Carl is the alternate, as kind of like the 5th outside hitter. Everybody else is the usual suspects. And
go ahead.
I was thinking that there's no, like, even though these guys are 3 years older than they were when they won Olympic gold, like that I don't think of that as a disadvantage for this French team. Whereas like Brazil being old, the United States being old, like might be a bit of a different story. This French team has been here before, and the personality of them is so unique, and it's because of the cohesiveness of these guys that we've come to know and love that my expectations for them are pretty high, at least relative to this pool.
When you talk about a team that has depth, though, like their outside core is pretty much interchangeable with Tilly, Engepeth, Clevno, Luetzi. You've got 4, and this is the identity of this French team, right? Is that you've got a collection of really, really, really good players, right? Engepeth is obviously, one of the big superstars, but Petri is skilled all around. Anyone on the outside is skilled all around. You got 2 fantastic setters. Like any way you go, you've got a world-class setter in Toniuti or Brizard, both who bring different aspects to different games and bring different matchups, and have both proven to be world-class. You have one of the most, maybe not underrated, but one of the most solid middle cores when you're looking at Chenin-Yeze and Neguff. Jouffroy has been fantastic. He's deadly from the service line too, and that's really what you want from a first libero or first middle off the bench to come in and be a potential serving sub. And then finally, you have arguably the best libero in the world in Grepenikov, right? Like this
low-key one of the deepest teams. Like we don't talk about how gnarly deep France is.
Gnarly deep. Like we talk about the depth on Italy. France is way deeper than Italy. France is like straight up. France is France is the deepest team right now. There is no doubt about it. They are the deepest team in the world right now. Who else?
Poland, but like
Sorry.
The difference. I mean, France has more good setters than Poland does, for whatever that's worth.
That's true.
Different conversation, but yeah,
and a better libero. Those skilled, those two skilled positions, right? And that's the thing is I think France is up there in terms of one of the most skilled teams in the world.
So skilled.
Skilled
in like a really like artistic and creative, very visibly appealing way. Yeah, this team's very good, and we'll talk about their pool prognosis later on because the rest of this pool is pretty sick. Do you want to move on to the next team?
Yeah, let's move on to Slovenia. And Rob, we talked about it a little bit. They ran through the preliminary round. They did come up to a bit of their Achilles heel against Japan.
Tough matchup.
Tough matchup in the quarterfinals. And really, though, Slovenia is a team that has qualified for their first Olympics for the first time, but this is the last breath for this group. And this is a group that has truly changed Slovenian volleyball. And in the past decade, they have won so many European medals and represented, what is generally a small country so well on the international stage. It's really good to see that they are here, but they're not only here just to make up numbers, Rob. This is a legitimate team that I think everyone, if you're not scared of Slovenia, you're very, very wary of them, and no one in the world takes Slovenia lightly.
Yeah, that I think is the interesting part about Slovenia, because you're absolutely right. They clearly deserve to be here. It's been a long time coming for really, like they've been Olympic caliber good for 6 or 8 years now, but the Olympic qualification system has been so unfriendly to European teams until this year that it kind of didn't break in their favor such that they could get in, and now they finally have. And it's been with the same crew that's done it for the last decade. Like this is not a deep team. But it is a team that has incredible team cohesiveness as far as the guys that we expect to see in an Olympic context. And it's cool to see, like, the one sort of handoff that's happened in the last few years was the starting setter position, is Dejan Vincic kind of fading into the background and handing that job to Gregor Ropret. But it is appropriate for Vincic to get this nod and be able to represent his country in the Olympics. I like the Sasha Stalakar pick in the middle. He's just a big monster. He played for Berlin. He's very capable and supportive. Pajenka Kozimiernik, Mujanovic, whatever at opposite. Ziga Stern, whatever at fourth outside hitter. But like the 7 starters that we know are what we know. And then Rok Mozic, one of the great young superstars in the world coming off the bench, is a great young superstar in the world.
Don't forget Yanni Kovacic either, too. He is
very underrated,
solid, underrated libero.
Absolutely. And I really like the job that Kreitzu has done. Georgi Kreitzu taking over the team, like mid last year, I think.
Mid last year. Remember they fired Lebedeau halfway through VNL, like not halfway through, but right after VNL. And hey, I mean, they weren't able to pick up that Olympic qualifying tournament berth, but they were able to be fantastic throughout this VNL to really.
Oh yeah, they were tremendous in VNL. I mean, 11-1. Now this brings us to the big conversation about Slovenia, and just like we talked about in the VNL, after they kind of got stomped, they did go 0-6 in the medal rounds, got crushed by Japan, got crushed by Poland, ended up finishing 4th. Slovenia is a very good team. Nobody is sleeping on them. Are they an actual contender though? Like what I have written down is, quote, can they win the big one? Can Slovenia win the big one in an Olympic context? I'm as much as I like them and they deserve to be here, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced they can win the big one in an Olympic context.
I just wonder about their play style, Rob. And it's highly dependent on Tonček Stern being world class. And I mean, we have maybe ragged on Tonček Stern for being a bit of a he's a bit of a volume whore, for lack of a better term. You know, like he needs that volume, and especially like when he was playing for Padova a few years ago. Oh, side note, I got absolutely chirped by an Italian ref coming back from the club in Vienna. Yeah, and I was saying, I said Padova, and he was like, "Oh, Padova," and just like started chirping me. But so yeah, I'm making a conscious effort. Padova. Oh, whatever. Padova. But he just needed so much volume to keep him going. But someone just said in the chat that he was better than Namir this year in the VNL. And I mean, I don't think that there's any doubt.
Statistically, that's true. Yeah. I mean, Stern was the leading scorer of the tournament. He was awesome. Yep. Now, that's the thing about play style. Tonček Stern hits the ball really hard. He doesn't hit it that high. He doesn't hit it with that much range. He is a big banger who hits the ball high seam a lot. And when teams get a hold of that, then it results in him getting shithoused time after time after time. If they can play fast enough, or if they can pick on late middle blockers enough, or what, and he does have a little bit of line range if he can work outside hand, great, fine. But like his attacking style at an Olympic level, I don't love. Plus, like the other teams in this pool are pretty good at blocking on the left side. Like France's left side block is good, Canada's left side block is good, and Serbia's left side block, other than Kovacevic, is pretty good. So Tonček Stern is definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Everywhere else, I think they're very good. It's just like they're not they don't have that one game-changing player that sometimes in Olympic Games you kind of need, right? Do you unless they pull Rokmozic off the bench?
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing about the Slovenia team is that arguably their best player is on the bench, but I kind of understand because he doesn't necessarily fit the style that
Right.
this team plays. But Tonček Stern, as you said, he is a bit of like a one-trick pony, and my worry for Slovenia is that they've kind of maybe exhausted all of that good juju, right? And then everyone kind of knows, like, they play the game in one way and one style, but everyone knows exactly how good they are because they dominated throughout the entirety of the VNL. Yeah, my biggest worry for them is that they really might just become a little bit too predictable, and that now that teams have all this video on them and they know exactly what's to come, that it's just kind of like, hey, Stern, you've got high seam or kind of low underneath cross, and like we know how to block you on that, right? They don't really bring anything that, like, to me, can't be handled by any team.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. They're good across the board. Their floor is high. They're not a team to lay that many eggs. Somebody in the chat just said that. Well, Tonček Stern can lay eggs, that I agree with, but like Slovenia as a team does not. They are a high floor team. I like their mentality enough to not play down. Now, this is the Olympic Games. You don't have to worry about anything like that. But like, do they have that top end, like, spectacular sparkle to like to win a quarterfinal game? Like, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. I think they're good enough on talent alone to make it out of this pool. Do they have that top end ability to win an Olympic quarterfinal game, especially in their first Olympics ever as a country? I'm not super convinced.
I mean, you said it right there too. I think that's really underrated in just being at the fact that it is their first Olympics as a country. And there's so much that goes into going to an Olympic Games. And even when you have, like, if you have a team that's gone a number of years in a row, even if you have lesser players, you will have the staff, you still have the organizational knowledge of how to be able to handle that and how to be able to deal with that, right?
Different. It is different.
Much different. It's just in terms of like all the set, like, to be honest, when it comes to volleyball, all of a sudden some people, like, everyone gives a shit about you, right? all of a sudden people are interested, right? All of a sudden there's people at for once, right? There's people at home actually watching, right? Your high school friends who don't give a shit about volleyball are all of a sudden like, hey, I saw what the team did last night. That was pretty good, eh? Specifically for Canada, obviously, talking about my own drama here, but it is vastly different than anything else in the world. And Slovenia is, if there's one rookie team that's going to be able to deal with it well, I think it is Slovenia, because they are such a veteran team. But you never know how you're going to react when it comes to all this. Like, I've heard stories about players who just kind of lost their mind after the opening ceremonies in one way or another, and then it's just kind of all gone downhill. Like, we see it time and time again every 4 years. So we don't know how Slovenia is going to be able to react in that situation, because they've never been there before.
Right. And makes this Olympics very fun and difficult to predict. But talent alone, if they can figure that out, I think they would be a shoo-in to at least make it out of this pool. Are we agreed on that? They should be able to make it out of this pool.
Yeah, they should. They should. I mean, when you look at it though, like, they did beat all three of the teams in this pool in the VNL, but they went to 5 with Canada and went to 5 with Serbia. So, like, this is something that, like, it could be close. And I've said it time and time again. It's always hard to beat a team twice in one season. You have to be a lot better than a team to be able to beat them twice solidly in one season.
True, I agree with that. Well, Everett, it's time. It's time. Let me tee you up here about the Maple Volleys, because this time last year, thinking about Canada qualifying for this Olympics was completely ridiculous. They were horrible for 2 VNLs in a row and a world championship, and then
a collective 6-18.
Horrendous
in 2 VNLs. Yes,
horrendous. And then Tomas Samelvelo got a hold of the team and got time to put some stuff in place, and he has maximized what he has in that Canadian program brilliantly well. They made an unbelievable run at Olympic qualifiers, of course. They then backed that up with an extremely good VNL this year, by far their best ever. And
you're gonna do all of this for me over here? What's going on?
I want to ask you, based on Tomas Samelvua's roster selection, what is the identity and what is kind of the ceiling of this particular Canadian Olympic team now they've qualified for 3 in a row?
Are you acting out here like he has like a bevy of players to choose from? Like, what do you mean his roster selections? Picking athletes 11 and 12 isn't exactly a roster selection. We know who the starting roster on this team is, right? You talked about Slovenia writing the starters for all of VNL. What about us? Like, we wrote our starters for the entirety of VNL. So I don't want any questions out here about roster selection. That's garbage.
I think the middle blocker position was a little bit in question. Like, I feel really bad for Pierce Shevchenko and the injury that he underwent, and then Jordan Schnitzer couldn't get healthy in time. I mean, we've sung Finn McCarthy's praises all summer and how unreal his ascension has been.
Here's the thing, Rob. As you try to take over my chat, you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna let you go," and then he breaks down.
Go nuts. Go nuts.
Yeah. You wait until we do USA in a couple of days. That I'm gonna have a lot more to say now. That's it. Yeah. But yeah, when you break down this, I mean, this is a team that's been here before, right? Ours been there before. Walsh has been there before. Hope's been there 3 times. This is a team that knows how to do the Olympics now. And really is on the up and up, as Rob so nicely stole for me to talk about. Now, this team has a very high end. I think it has the ability to get hot and make a run, no doubt about it. And we've seen it before. Like, this team has the ability to play some world-class volleyball, but this team is also very susceptible to a few different things. Mainly serve receive. Like that serve receive game for Canada is the most crucial thing in all of this. If they are able to stay solid and stay cohesive on serve receive, and that's one of the biggest things that we saw, is that when it rains, it pours, right? When teams were to pile on serving on Team Canada, it was kind of like when we go back to that game against Serbia in the last game in Ottawa, it was just nonstop. And that line, that serve receive line between Lepke, Mar, and Louis really starts to break down. If they can keep that solid, and on the other side of the ball, they can keep the pressure on in the serve game. We always know that when Canada's having a good serve game because Luke Herr is starting to pop off. So if the entire team can keep that pressure on in the serve game, and we don't necessarily need to play. I think we're one of the best out-of-system teams in the world. Right. I think we play out-of-system volleyball better than anyone else. I think Stephen Marr might be the best out-of-system hitter in the world in terms of how he's able to score and find different ways to score. He can power it through. He can go high off hands. He can go off speed. He can volley it. Like, there's so many different ways for Mar to score in transition. And Lepke is one of the most crafty guys, right? I think our pipe is the middle of our court for us, especially now with Finn McCarthy there, really adds a different dimension to this game. He hits the ball at a different tempo and a different height than any Canadian middle blocker I've ever seen, right? Arthur Szwarc, when he was in the middle, hit the ball that high, but not at the tempo and not at the angle that Finn McCarthy has. And the way that he adds another dimension on from the baseline too with his serve is something altogether. So if Canada can serve well, if the Maple Volleys can serve well and limit the errors, and I don't need them, like, I just need them to fight off aces.
Yeah,
right?
It doesn't have to be perfect.
If it can get anywhere near to the attack line, Luke Herr is a good enough setter, and we've got guys on the outlets good enough to be able to run anything. And then that's when we start being able to open up. Our serve receive game is going to be able to allow us to open up our block game. Like, our block game is one of the most crucial parts because it sets up our defense. Our blocking and our block touches as well, what allows us to play in transition. And that's going to be able to, what we're going to be able to open everything up. I think the play of Justin Louis as a first time, like, he's been brand new, and I think he's done fantastic. And he was so, like, when you compare Justin Louis this year at VNL to the way Justin Louis played 2 years ago in his first year, different player altogether. Like, if you talk about guys that I'm immensely proud of, like, there's so many guys on this roster that I'm immensely proud of. I've talked about Finn McCarthy so much this year, so we don't really need to go into it. But Justin Louis, like, that's a dude who I'm pretty sure he was thinking about quitting volleyball at the end of the summer of 2022, right? He went from being like basically chased off the court at VNL, the national team, to being the backup to Jordan Pereira on a B team that was pretty good, and then started the VNL in 2023 and being on the bench behind Curry and somehow won the starting job back, and he has been fantastic. But if he's able to really focus and keep his head down throughout all this, I think he can have a great one. But ultimately, I think Arthur Szwarc is how he responds is going to be massive, because we know Mar and Lepke are going to be fantastic. We know Mar and Lepke are going to be, they've established themselves as one of the best outside hitter duos in the world, and they know how to get it done at all levels, right? That they proved that this year with Monza. Arthur didn't prove that this year with Monza. He proved that he could score a lot of points in the regular season, but he didn't prove that he could get it done in gut check time, other than the semifinal win in the Coppa Italia against Trentino. But otherwise, everyone knows that Monza was better. Monza was way better with Lepke on the right and Ran on the left. No doubt about it.
So that's what I wanted to ask about, because Canada now is a really unique team in that out of system, Arthur Szwarc is their third option.
Yeah,
like that's not typical for how you set up offensive distribution in or out of system. Like, I think what Smelvo has figured out is that Stephen Marr and Eric Lepke are so damn good, not only at scoring, but also just making decisions. That's part of what makes them so good out of system, is that they're so skilled and they're so good at recognizing situations and executing that they don't have to rely on Arthur to score against triple blocks all the time.
Yep.
Like a lot of other opposites have to do, like Grozer, obviously, and some others that will be leaned on pretty heavily this tournament. But can Arthur be a good, if he can be an excellent supportive player, if he can put up maybe 12 points a game, serve the ball decently, block a couple balls, like that's all Canada needs out of him. He doesn't have to be a hero. He doesn't have to be the best player on the court.
But he can be.
He can be at the top level.
And that's one of the biggest question marks for me, is that in this situation, and I think that was one of the big things when Canada played Serbia in that last match of VNL, and there where I was a little bit disappointed in that he had a pretty good game, but then kind of tailed off a little bit. And I need him to be at least one time, if Canada's going to make a run, there's at least one time that he's going to need to pop off and change the course of the game. The rest of the time, he can do his job and play within the system, and I'm confident that he's going to be able to do that. But if Canada is going to need to make a run, there's going to be one time when Stephen Marr doesn't show up, right? There's going to be one time when Eric Lepke doesn't show up, and there's going to be one of the times when Nick Hogue is going to be brought on the court, much like the semifinal against Cuba at the Norseca Championships, like that, which you can all go back on our channel and watch. I think that there's going to be an opportunity for him to really step up, and in one of those matches, I think he has that ability to. So
yeah, I can see it right now. There's going to be a long rally at 21-21, and Arthur's going to get a chance to put away a break point that, like, to end a long rally out of system against three blockers, and whether or not he can do that when called upon in a big moment, I think is kind of going to define Canada's tournament. But and I agree with you, he can do that, but will he when his number's called? I guess we'll see, because even though he's been to the Olympics before, different position. He was playing middle blocker last time out.
Yeah, and a different role too, right? He was
totally.
he was kind of starting, kind of not. There's a lot of questions about it. And now, there's no doubt
he's
that
the guy. Yep,
he's the guy. But also people know about him too, right? You don't score 300 points in the Superliga without being known, and that's exactly what Arthur Szwarc did this year. So yeah, and then too, when you look at Canada's, I do really like our schedule.
Yes, we will look at that in a little bit, but you did get a pretty good break with schedule.
Yes, I like the way it's laid out for us. Overall, and I've said this time and time again, is that I come from an era where Canada qualifying for the Olympics was a fantasy. When I started covering and watching this team, and you know what, as you said, absolutely before, that this was a fantasy a year ago right now.
Yes, it was.
The idea of this Maple Volleys team qualifying for the Olympics was ridiculous, right? And I would be the first one to say that. And then they showed up and they showed us how to play Maple volleyball, and that I think has been so good, is that this team plays like a Canadian team should, and I recognize it, and I absolutely love that. But yeah, when you go up and down this roster, I think you're going to see the one area that you're maybe going to see a little bit of leeway is in the middle. Ultimately, I think Demyanenko and McCarthy are going to be the starters. You're going to have Van Berkel off the net, but Van Berkel, once again, is a veteran, has been to an Olympics before, has played a lot of volleyball in his life, and has played a lot for this team. So he's definitely going to be used. I think Brett Walsh, we're going to see him at least at some point as well. Definitely going to see him in a double sub once in a while. You're going to bring in Xander Ketrzinski, who I think has earned his spot in this team. With Riley Barnes being the extra guy. I think Canada is a dangerous team to play. I don't think anyone wants to play this team, but I also think that compared to Slovenia, where everyone's so keen on their due, no one cares enough about us to like really get down to business on us. So I think we're kind of right in that perfect spot to maybe just slip on through. And historically, we have had some pretty good results at the Olympics, making it to the quarterfinals the past 2 times. And there's no Russia. And there's no Russia this time. So
yeah, shout out to that for everybody's sake.
Well, I mean, shout out except for the fans, because of having Russia in this tournament, Serbia and out of Russia. Goodness gracious,
it'd be ridiculous. But like every team is like, hell yeah, we don't have to play Russia. Thank goodness.
Absolutely right. So our kryptonite is gone.
Ours too.
And hopefully, I mean, Italy's still in the tournament. Hopefully, I'm very hopeful for this team. I very am, but I think no matter what, I'm going to enjoy watching this team at the Olympics.
Lot to enjoy about this Canadian team. Last thing I'll say is Brody Hofer as a serving sub is an X factor. He was so clutch in VNL in that role.
Brody Hofer's performance as a serving sub over the course of the entirety of the VNL was the most impressive serving sub performance I've ever seen.
Way up there for me too.
Yeah, he was really, really good. And I don't know how many aces he got. Let me hold up. He got 6 aces and only 4 errors over the course of the but I'm pretty sure 2 of those errors came in the quarterfinal game against Japan too. It was the one game that he didn't serve well. But I would love to see the actual serving numbers on how much pressure he put on, because he was consistently putting teams into out of system situations.
A positive ace to error ratio, ice cold off the bench, is insane.
It's massive.
Crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And
so,
I mean, that alone earned him a spot on the Olympic team. Like that's exactly what his role is going to be. And that's exactly what he's going to be called upon to do. And he's shown in big moments that he can do it. So don't sleep on that. Speaking of serving, Everett, it's time to talk about Serbia. There's not that much to talk about Serbia. We've talked about them a lot in their journey to get to the Olympics. They are here for the first time since 2012. Whether or not they deserve to be here is a conversation that we've had all summer. However, what is very clear is that this Serbian team is dangerous enough and is volatile enough, especially from the service line, that if they get hot, they can single-handedly beat a team out of absolutely nowhere. But then if they're not good from the service line, they will lay down and die and get 3-donged, and they won't be threatening at all. But I mean, we saw it in Ottawa. They came out of nowhere, just unbelievable from the baseline, and they beat Canada that one game. Then that Pavle Peric run that like randomly beat the Netherlands that other game with 3 aces in a row. Like that's the danger of Serbia, in that they're not the scariest team top to bottom. I think they're a pretty low volleyball IQ team, and they're not that good of a ball control team, but they're so volatile that if they get hot,
they get hot. And the thing is that they're probably they always lull you into a false sense of security, right? Think about the Cuba game, right? Where they did nothing for 2 sets, and it looked like Cuba was going to cruise to a 3-dong, and then all of a sudden these guys just slap each other probably in the face, and just like that straight up Eastern European stereotype that's like and I remember too that they did an interview with their assistant coach, and he was like kind of smiling and be like, we're just gonna have to play better in the next set and change things. And that's exactly what they did, and they just kind of turned it on. Like, this team is passionate, right? And that can kind of go 2 ways. I could see this team going 0-3, having just gotten to the Olympics, and that's going to be enough, right? But I could also see this team maybe even going 2-1, right? Pulling out a couple of upsets. I think that's a stretch, but it could happen.
It could.
It could happen.
That's the ceiling. But like, and the path to get there is 2 unbelievable serving games. That's it. Like, that's the path to get there. And then
not even the thing is that Serbia is just one of those unassuming teams that they've got the straight up skill. And
I don't know if they have the skill. They have the physicality for sure.
Oh, come on. With guys like Kovacevic, like they've got
Kovacevic is a slimy little clown.
Exactly. But that's like, he's a skilled player. Exactly. He's a slimy little clown. And I mean, so, and also big shout out to Claire Hanna. She was talking to their head coach during Vienna, Ottawa, and he was asking her about Kovacevic, and he was like, he's nowhere near ready. Like, he's nowhere near ready. Like, he's getting ready. He's here to like rehab and get ready for the Olympics. So I think that he is going to be more of a thing. And I think they're going to go with maybe more of an old school lineup, using maybe a Kovacevic and an Ivovic. I think Kovacevic is going to start for this team for sure. And then we're going to see how it goes down. But this is a team that they have enough skill that they're going to keep up with most teams in the world, right? And then if all they need is 1 or 2 serves on a serving run, and that gets them going, and they just start yelling at each other, and they're all good to go, right? So Serbia is a dangerous team.
They're dangerous. I don't totally see it that way with the skill. I see it with the physicality, and like that's what makes them dangerous. They are not that good at the setter position. They are not that good at the libero position, and they are not that good in reception.
I don't know. Kapoor, like, he made some plays, or I'm definitely saying that poorly. I apologize, but he made some plays. He's one of those sleepy guys that, once again, he needs to get riled up. Like, that is the general identity of this Serbian team. They need to get riled up.
True. Well, it's the Olympic Games. They can't get riled up for that. Then they clearly don't belong here. But it's the blocking and the serving that they are classically good at, that can catch fire and single-handedly randomly win them a match. And it's all really going to come down to Drazen Ljuberic. He was the reason they qualified. The reason they qualified through VNL, especially week 3, was because of how good and how efficient Drazen Ljuberic was, and how well he served from the baseline. That carried Serbia to this point. If they have any chance in this pool, he's going to have to be unbelievable, and the rest of the team is going to have to go on heaters, serving enough to steal 3 sets on a given day, and see what happens. I agree with you. I think they could go 0-3. 2-1 is the ceiling. I do not see them beating France in any universe. But if they serve the ball well enough, they could steal one from Canada and or Slovenia if, like, the stars aligned.
Bro, I mean, they beat us in VNL. Right. They took Slovenia to 5. Like, that's very much in the wheelhouse. Like, I'm very scared of I'm almost more scared of Serbia than Slovenia. I think we match up worse against Serbia than Slovenia, because
I actually don't disagree with that.
Slovenia kind of serves muffins, and it works to our advantage. But when you look at this, like, this team is really strong down the middle. Podashanin and Nedeljkovic are both. Like, Podashanin is an absolute legend, and Nedeljkovic might be one of the more underrated middles in the world.
Yeah, he had a really good season in Italy this year. Like, bad team, but
he was fantastic for Friedrichshafen the year before. And Krismanovic as well is also really good off the bench, and could also be a starter. So you've got, like, even with Miran Kujundžić, Ivovic, Peric, I think you've got a solid outside core. You've got a potential game changing. Ljuberic needs to be fantastic, though. He only had 4 games, 4 of the 12 games in VL, and he scored over 20. He needs to be scoring to over 20 every single game for this Serbian team, because if you look at this Serbian team, he led the team in scoring and basically doubled up the next guy almost.
Yeah, that's pretty typical.
So, yeah, he's going to need to be even better than he was in VNL for Serbia to have any chance. But it is a possibility.
Oh, it's possible. It's completely possible. Let's take a look at the schedule now, Everett, because everybody gets a different draw, and it breaks ever so slightly differently. Everybody will play 3 matches in 7 days. And it depends on, in between each match, you'll either get 1, 2, or maybe even 3 days off in between games. Canada, for example, plays Slovenia on day 1. They get 1 day off. They play France. Then they get 3 days off before playing Serbia. So the schedule breaks a little differently for every team. but I'll just read it down really quick for people on audio. On Sunday, July 28th, which is day 1 of the men's tournament. No, sorry, that's day 2 of the men's tournament. But Sunday, July 28th, France versus Serbia and Slovenia versus Canada. Then on Tuesday, July 30th, Slovenia versus Serbia and France versus Canada. Friday, August 2nd, you have France versus Slovenia. And then Saturday, August 3rd, the last day of men's pool play, Canada versus Serbia. Maybe for a spot in the quarterfinals, we'll see.
I think if I'm going to start with Canada here, I really like our schedule. I think getting Slovenia first has the biggest potential of upsetting them. And here's the thing. That first France versus Serbia game is going to be volatile.
For
Because
sure.
if there's one team that's going to go up and want to throw some haymakers in either metaphorical or literal senses, who knows with Serbia, I think that first game has the potential to be a banger. And I think I'm not going to say it's 50-50, but you said I don't. If Serbia and France were playing in game 2 or game 3, I think it's France all the way. But because it's that first game of the tournament, and it's because it's the first game of the Olympics for France, I think there's a lot more potential for something to happen on both sides, because it's a big opportunity. Like, once again, Serbia is a passionate team, right? For my Canadian friends, it's like playing against an RSEQ team in the first round of U Sports National Championships, right? They're going to show up with a lot of passion, and they're going to surprise the hell out of you, right? So I think that game 1 there, Serbia-France, actually has upset potential. If France steamrolls Serbia, then I think game 2, Canada versus France, has upset potential. Right, especially because that's the game that only has one day in between. I think that's a perfect scenario. And on the flip side, I love getting Slovenia first. France, this. If you were to ask me how I wanted the schedule to play out, this is how I'd want the schedule to play out.
Yeah, because you get Slovenia in their first match of the Olympics ever. I think that's the right time to catch them. Then I think the only chance you have of beating France in this pool is if you catch them sleeping for whatever reason, whether it's the first match or if they dominate Serbia, no problem, then they may be a little sleepy in the second match. I think that's a pretty good assessment, but this pool is top to bottom very good, very scary, very difficult to predict. I think the one overall storyline I'm really interested in is the opposite position. I think this pool has 4 very unique, very different opposites that all fulfill different roles and that are all going to be incredibly important. I mean, Jean Patry for France, I will continue to die on the hill that he keeps being robbed of MVP awards. The last Olympics and this VNL should have won MVP of both of them. He just doesn't really get the shine because he's not quite as flashy, but there are very few players that I trust more in a must-win match than Jean Patry. Arthur Szwarc, we already talked about how, I mean, he's new to the position. He plays a little bit more of a support role, but his number is going to be called at least once, and he's got to be ready to step up. Drazen Luberic, completely the opposite. He's going to be the guy and practically has to put Serbia on his back. And then Tonček Štern, who's so good this summer, can his play style hold up against the best teams in the world in an Olympic context? I think all that is super interesting. And then the little sprinkle of a wild card is what the hell kind of Irvin Ingapet are we going to see? We haven't really seen him in full form in
I don't think we need to worry about.
I don't think we need to worry. I'm just saying that we don't know. We don't know.
But I don't think French fans need to worry. I think we're going to get top form Irvin Ingapet, or what top form is right now.
Yeah, I hope so too.
So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. But you're not wrong. I think this pool is going to be dictated large in part by the opposites, and I don't necessarily agree that Jean-Pat maybe should have been the MVP. I think there's an argument for it, no doubt about it, but I'm not necessarily 100% with you on that one. However, I do think that he has A, MVP potential, but B, he's just a workhorse for this team.
Yeah.
He doesn't take a lot of volume, but he takes really important stuff in the way that he's able to spread out, the way that both Tanuti and Brizard are able to spread out the offense for France in their various different ways really works well for them. And they need so much. They need Patry more than anyone, I think, right? And that's why I think he's an MVP, is that Ingapet could have a bad game and you can slot in Klevno and City, or even Luetzi and Klevno, or however any one of those systems work. But Patry, it has to be Patry on the right hand side, on the opposite side.
I agree. All right, Everett. There's 2 things left to do before we take a little break and jump into the women's. The first is we got to pick it. Who finishes where in this pool and who makes it out? Because remember, top 2 make it out, plus If you take the 3 teams that finish third in the 3 pools, you rank them, and the top 2 of those 3 make it out as well. So there will be one third place team that does not make it to the quarterfinals. But if you get 4th, you're done. So you're Canadian, obviously, but let me hear it. What do you think is going to happen here?
I think Serbia is going to come in 4th. I think they're going to go 0-3. I think they're going to kind of fade. I think they're going to have blown their load on qualifying for Olympics, and that was always their thought. And now actually competing at the Olympics is going to be too much, because we ultimately know, like this Serbia team technically on paper wasn't as good as Cuba at the VNL, but they just won some more important games. So I think Serbia is coming 4th. I think Slovenia is coming 3rd. I think in their first Olympics, that it's going to be a little bit too much for them, and they're not going to be necessarily ready for it. And it's not that they're not ready for it, but it's just there's so many things that you don't know what you don't know at this point for Slovenia. And I think, like I said, that they play a very predictable play style, and that ultimately Canada is going to be able to jump on top of that and finish 2nd, go 2-1, losing to France, and France will win the pool.
I definitely agree that France is going to win the pool. I mean, I can try to talk myself into scenarios where they're going to, sleepwalk and lose a game, or like the external factors or all that. It's France. They're too damn good. When they lock in, they are too damn good. And I don't see a world where they fail to lock in for an Olympic match at home. I just don't see a world where that happens. So I've got them going 3-0 as well. I also, as much as I can talk myself into Serbia being volatile and dangerous, I don't see it in this format. I like them to go 0-3. But I'm going to pick Slovenia 2, Canada 3. I think that Canada's service reception is a little bit of a concern. It is a coin flip, and I do think that Canada should and will make it out of their pool. But I've got them in seed order. France 1, Slovenia 2, Canada 3, Serbia 4.
Yeah, but Slovenia isn't a good serving team. That's where I think we really gonna get our rocks off against them. So
we'll see about that, I guess.
Yeah, I think so too. But yeah, I mean, I can also respect that. Yeah. You're gonna be wrong, but I can respect that.
All right, last but not least, before we take a little break and start talking about the women's, is we now have figured out our schedule. We know what we're doing now for the entirety of the Olympics, and here it is. We've got,
and if you guys have missed us, let me tell you,
you're gonna get sick.
You are guys going to be so sick of us over the next little bit. It is not even going to be funny.
So today is Wednesday, July 24th. There's a week and a half, 10 days till the Olympics starts. We're doing both Pool A's today. Women's is coming up in a few minutes. On Monday, this coming Monday, July 22nd, we're going to do both Pool B's, men's and women's, 2 videos, same style as this. Following day on Tuesday, we're going to do both Pool C's. We're also in the background going to be recording and editing and working on our full Olympic preview videos for each tournament, 1 men's, 1 women's. Those are going to release next week. Those will be similar in style to the VNL preview videos that we put out every year, but they will be bigger and better, and in a way that will be explained in a little bit. Hopefully next week we'll tell you the details of how much bigger and better we're going this Olympics. And then once the tournament starts, next Saturday, July 27th, we're going live pretty much every day.
Pretty much, yeah. I think we're missing 2 days.
Yeah, there are 16 days of the tournament. I think there's 1, maybe 2 days that we're not going to do a post-game show. So we're going to be live all the time on this here channel. And yes, I did make a mistake. It's the first date should be the 17th, not the 24th. My bad. I'll fix that for later. We're going to be busy. I'm really excited about it. And Everett, I know you're excited about it too, because we're not done. We're going to kill this video. We're going to take a couple minutes, and then we're going to start another video in just a few minutes to talk about women's Pool A.
Yeah. So you guys are going to be absolutely tired of us from all of the content that we're going to be doing. We're going to be a little bit everywhere. So definitely tune in. Rob, do we want to have a quick little checkup right now, real quick? I think we should do it now.
Yeah, sure. We've both been all over the place. My summary is very short. I was at Wapaka last weekend, and which is always just an amazing time, except this year Mother Nature is the worst, and she decided to cancel everything on Saturday night with thunderstorms. So I barely got to commentate all the top divisions of the grass tournament. They had to split out the pots, like they weren't able to finish the tournament. It was a muddy disaster, and I had to come home a night earlier than I was expecting. So that was a big bummer. It reminds me that most of the time we cover indoor sports that are not weather dependent, and the one time it's weather dependent, it sucked. Speaking of outdoor volleyball, Everett, what were you up to last week?
I was at a weather dependent event, Rob. And I will say the weather was one of the hottest that I have ever experienced. But for those who don't know, if you are an OG fan of Volleyball Source, and by OG I mean you followed Volleyball Source when it was Volleyball Source and not Volleyball Source 2.0, if you know what I mean, on YouTube, you will actually know that I have a pretty extensive beach volleyball experience. And I actually had the good fortune of working for our friends over at Volleyball World. And I went down to Vienna for the Elite 16 and was there doing some interviews and doing some highlights and stuff like that over the course of the last little bit. So we figured that out on like Monday last week that it was happening. I left on Wednesday, was there Thursday until yesterday. Came home yesterday, and now we're pretty back. So yeah, it was pretty fun. Never thought I'd say this, but big shout out to Volleyball World for bringing me out to an event.
The times are changing. Crazy stuff's going on. So Everett and I are going to take a minute or two. It's almost 6 p.m. my time. Give us like 5 minutes, and we will be back to talk about women's pool A on a separate live stream video, which you'll be able to find right about now. So we'll see you over there.
Yeah, I have a veal Parmesan sandwich that I need to finish. Let's go.
Go for it.